Good afternoon to our viewers in Germany and good morning to our viewers in the United States. Hello, I'm Steve Sokol, the president of the American Council on Germany, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's Kaffeepause, where we regularly check in with journalists based in Germany to talk about the news stories behind the headlines. And today, I'm delighted to speak with Miriam Hollstein. She's not only an alum of the American Council on Germany, but she is also chief reporter for Stern in Berlin. Miriam, herzlich willkommen and welcome back to the Kaffeepause.
Thanks for having me.
So the news from Syria seems to be dominating the headlines today, both in Germany and here in the United States. As I was listening to Deutschlandradio and watching news reports coming in, it seems like there are all sorts of German foreign policy recommendations when you think about the party leadership. Also, the fall of the Assad regime appears to have ignited, or should I say reignited, the long simmering migration debate in Germany and how long Syrian refugees should be allowed to stay in Germany. On the domestic front, the news just broke that a coalition will form in the state of Thuringia following the elections in September. It will be made up of the Christian Democrats, the newcomer Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht, and the Social Democrats, and actually falls one vote short of an absolute majority. And so the hope is that the left party will vote with the coalition on any matters of importance. But there are a number of other stories that are well worth following. And so, Miriam, I thought maybe you could start by setting the stage for us and telling us what the issues are, what the stories are that are top of mind for you.
Well, I think the most important story is our upcoming snap election. On Monday, next Monday, Olaf Scholz will call for a vote of confidence, and we all expect him to lose it because he wants to lose it. And then the president will dissolve the parliament within 21 days. And finally, we'll have the snap election on 23rd of February. And I would say that the mood in political Berlin at the moment is kind of depressed, very depressed, because although everyone was expecting the collapse of the traffic light coalition, it still came as a shock, especially because it came right the day after the victory of Donald Trump. And you have to keep in mind that we are not used to a government collapse, and that we are also not used to political instability. And that, I think, that makes us all a little depressed, even more depressed, because Berlin winter is no fun. It's long and it's cold and it's gray and it's depressing. And I think for the next weeks until the snap election, we will have a lame duck government, of course, because now it's a minority government, and it will have to depend on changing majorities to pass laws and make key decisions, and that will make the situation kind of paralyzed. Mm-hmm. And I also think it could give a boost to the extremist parties like the AfD and you just mentioned it, the Alliance Sarah Wagenknecht, Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht.
Yeah. So it's kind of So obviously domestic politics is front and center right now. And I had read a report, I guess, a week ago or so that this is the first time that there will be an election this early in the year. So it comes right after the Weihnachtszeit, the Christmas time, and the holiday season, and that a number of people are sort of upset about how the campaigning is supposed to take place while this is going on, whether we can expect to see candidates at holiday markets,
yes.
at Christmas markets.
Yes.
How is that sort of playing out? Are these sort of more social gatherings being used in a political way in this Advent period?
No, well, we have, as a matter of fact, you're really well informed as always, because we have a discussion going on when should the election campaign start, because the big challenge is that we now have a winter election campaign, which means that you won't be able to have big gatherings outside for quite a while. So there was the discussion if the winter and Christmas markets, if this would be a good opportunity to approach potential voters. And my feeling is that the Germans are divided. Some of them are so fed up with all what happened with the traffic light coalition and all the arguments that they don't want to hear anything before the start of the new year. And the others say, well, we have so little time left until February, until the snap election. We have to go forward now and to talk to the people. So I think some party members will do it and others will wait until the beginning of next year. But as a matter of fact, the election campaign is still ongoing, is already ongoing, because I mean the surprise visit of Olaf Scholz to Kiev last Monday and the visit of his opponent Friedrich Merz today in Kiev, this of course is also part of the election campaign.
Yeah, of course. And I definitely in our conversation wanted to ask you about Scholz's visit to Kiev and the fact that Friedrich Merz, the opposition leader, is in Kiev as we speak, and whether you read anything into that. But I wanted to sort of come back to something else that you said, that Germany is not used to political instability. It's been very interesting since November 6th and the news, A, of Trump's victory in the United States, but B, the collapse of the traffic light coalition in Germany. I've spoken with a number of people, and it's interesting. A number of Germans have said, your election is set. We know who the president's going to be, but we don't know exactly what the policies of the US might be. We in Germany at least have a functioning government. And even though the coalition has collapsed and even though there's a minority government, it is more, you can anticipate more easily. It is more berechenbar what this government and what a future government will do. Does that give the public a sense of security, or is it more that people really are just fed up with all things politics, disillusioned with the traffic light coalition and now with the red-green minority government?
I think a lot of them have lost the trust in the government that it works. So it will be quite a challenge for the next government. I don't know how it will look like. I mean, I have a guess. I have an educated guess, but one of the main tasks will be to restore the trust of the Germans into the government, that that it can work together, and that it will not fight all the time, and that it's ready to solve the biggest challenges. Yeah. So I think no. At the moment, we don't have the feeling that we can have a lot of trust into politics. But of course, we don't have a populist upcoming as our next chancellor so far.
Right.
But this is an interesting thing, because what I hear now from a lot of politicians when I talk to them is that the upcoming election is not the important election. The most important election is the next election in 2029. Because if the upcoming government will not manage the problems we have, then the next government will be a populist one with probably an AfD chancellor. And this could cause such a situation as you have it in the United States right now, that you not know exactly what kind of government you have to expect.
So in that sense, I mean, as you talk with the political elite, it seems as if there's recognition that there's a lot at stake in this election. It might not be the most important election, but that there's a lot at stake in terms of the path forward and navigating that political path forward. Do you think that the public shares that sense of importance in what's at stake at this election?
Yes, I think so. I think they are ready to give the next government a very last chance. And if they don't have the problem if they don't have the feeling that their problems will be solved, then they will turn away from traditional parties. And I mean, we already see that the AfD will come in second at the upcoming election. I mean, it gets in the recent polls, it gets 20%. And I would guess it will get even a little more at the election. So if we want to fight extremism, then we need a stable government.
I mean, obviously, we'll have to see what happens on election day and to what degree the polling numbers are people who are sort of voicing their protest and dissatisfaction right now, and what they actually will do on election day could be different, but we'll have to see. I think that there does not seem to be a huge amount of enthusiasm around the candidates. And as you said, the campaigning has clearly already started. We talked a little bit earlier about the fact that Olaf Scholz was in Kiev last week, that Friedrich Merz, the head of the CDU, is currently in Kiev. And so obviously policy toward Ukraine is one of the items on the agenda across the political parties. But one of the big issues is also what sort of military support should be supplied to Ukraine. And this is where Olaf Scholz has been very reluctant / has actually refused to supply Ukraine with some of Germany's Taurus missiles, even though the US, France, and Germany have provided their own cruise missiles to Ukraine. Friedrich Merz feels a little bit differently, and has said that Germany ought to deliver these long-range missiles to Ukraine. How is that sort of playing out in the public, and do you think that this issue is going to be top of mind when people go to the polls?
What we can see at the moment is that there are two key issues with regard to the election campaign. One issue is the economy and the bad state of the economy. And the other issue is the war in Ukraine. And as a matter of fact, I think both sides, the conservatives as well as the social democrats, are trying to depict kind of a dualism between the two leaders. The social democrats try to portray Friedrich Merz as a warmonger who is playing, and now I quote the chancellor, Russian roulette, and that he's putting in risk Germany's security. And the other side, the conservatives, they are trying to depict Olaf Scholz as someone who is only supporting Ukraine half-heartedly, and that he's in this way prolonging the suffering of the Ukrainian people, and that he is also not collaborating with the other allies by doing such unilateral moves like calling President Putin. If you ask me what resonates more with the German public, I think that Olaf Scholz is hitting a nerve, because when you mentioned the fight about if we should deliver Tauruses or not, I think this is the dividing line, right? Because, like you said, Olaf Scholz what he did in the past was that he said, I'm reluctant, I'm careful, I'm not putting Germany's security at risk, I'm not going to provoke Russia, so I'm not going to deliver whatever Ukraine asks me for. And then the pressure was increasing, and then he ended up by delivering it. Like, for example, the Leopard tanks. I think he's not going to do it with the Tauruses because they have become such a symbol in this election campaign. So this will be the dividing line. And as a matter of fact, 63% of the German public right now is against the delivery of Tauruses. I think it will not be enough to make him chancellor again, but it could help him to present himself as the so-called chancellor of peace to get a little more or more votes at the election in the election.
I did want to ask you about this notion. I mean, it came up, I guess, a few weeks ago, if not a few months ago at this point, that Scholz was describing himself as the Friedenskanzler or the peace chancellor. How is that? And obviously, we see it with his position on the Taurus missiles. That's part of the justification. He's trying to stay cool, stay calm, use diplomatic means, and not military means. But he took a lot of criticism for his phone call with Vladimir Putin just a week or so before he visited Kiev last week. Does he really come across as the peace chancellor? Is that how he's seen?
In parts of German society, he is, because you should not forget that East Germany is very reluctant when it comes to arm deliveries to Ukraine. A lot of people are still have this image of like Russia being for a long time the friend of East Germany, and they are much closer to Russian culture than we are in West Germany. And they feel very uncomfortable with the fact that Putin now is portrayed as the big villain. They think you should be able to talk to him and to use diplomatic means. So I think it really hits a nerve with them. And that's also a reason why the new alliance of Sarah Wagenknecht has such a success. It's mainly based on the demand to negotiate with Russia. And she's telling the people all the time that we don't do enough, that Olaf Scholz, the government, is not doing enough to negotiate with Putin.
And I mean, just so everybody remembers, I mean, the Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht, or the Alliance Sarah Wagenknecht, is a relatively new political party. It only appeared on the scene earlier this year, and I guess in January of this year that it first came about. And it's been interesting in following the state elections in Eastern Germany that even though state politics is different from national politics and federal politics, and states don't have a big role in foreign policy, the Alliance Sarah Wagenknecht and Sarah Wagenknecht herself were trying to use their position on Ukraine and on foreign policy issues as a way of as a point of leverage when forming coalitions with other parties. They said that they wouldn't form a coalition with other parties that are supporting Ukraine, and that doesn't seem to be the case in Thuringia now that this coalition has formed with the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats as well. So does that mean that the party's not able to hold up to its big promises, or does it have more to do with the fact that we have to look at federal issues versus state issues?
I think that politics, it's probably the same in the US. It's more and more about symbols and about feelings, and less about real politics. So this is why it worked for the alliance of Sarah Wagenknecht to say we are a peace party of peace. And if we are part of the government, then this government has to promise that it will try to put pressure on the federal government not to deliver arms to Ukraine, although this is not something a regional parliament or a government can decide upon. So, but it worked in the two lenders, although everyone knew it was symbolic. And it's the same with the economy. If you ask people what they think about the economy, most of them say, well, the state of the economy in Germany is really bad. And if they ask them about their personal situation, they say, oh, well, it's pretty good. But they still are ready to vote for a party which says that the elites are not governing the country the right way anymore.
And I think some would argue that that's something that we saw in the United States as well, right? That the role of the economy was critical in the election in November, that issues around inflation were incredibly important. And I think if anything, Germany has even been more hard hit by inflation than the United States has been. Is inflation and employment playing a role when people are thinking about the economy?
Yes, because I think this is just the way how it is, that everyone can feel that Germany has become the sick man of Europe again. That's what it was called back in the 90s. And then we had the reforms made by the former Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, who has not such a good reputation anymore, but it helped the economy to get back on track. So now it's the sick man of Europe again, and that's I think, I mean, you can see it with the VW announcement of like shutting down 3 factories in Germany for the first time in its history. So I mean, people see and feel that the economy is in a bad state.
Well, and I did want to ask you about that, right? I mean, it's been in the news, of course, that Germany is planning to close some of its plants. Sorry, the VW is planning to close some of its plants in Germany, and that this is something nobody ever could have imagined. But it's also led to some strikes beginning last Monday, the 2nd of December. Around 100,000 workers at 9 of 10 of Germany's VW plants walked out. And today there's a 4-hour warning strike that's taking place at the moment. And there could be more. What's the response to what's going on at Volkswagen? And is that maybe a way that makes a little bit more tangible sort of some of the struggles that the German economy finds itself in at the moment?
I think it's that what happens to the car industry is kind of symbolic for the German industry, because it not only shows that it has a lot of problems, but also that a lot of problems are homemade, because what we can see is that the car industry totally missed the transformation towards electric mobility. And this is the reason why it is in the situation it is. I mean, the most sold electric car model, guess what it is in Germany? Not only in Germany, but also in Germany. What kind of electric car model is?
I'm guessing it's the Tesla.
It's the Tesla Y model. So, and then the WV models are way falling behind. And I think a special problem of VW is that parts of it are still state-owned, and that they always had very high salaries and a very intense welfare system, social welfare system for their employees. And they were never ready to, that's what experts saying, I'm not an expert in car industry, they were not ready to make painful reforms they should have made like years ago. And that's now what we can see is the result. But so, this also could mean that, I mean, what we are hoping is that a new government will have learned the lesson and will knows that it has to do reforms, it has to be brave, it has to be innovative, it has to loosen the debt brake, to have to put more money in the investments for future investments, and that is a chance to reshape Germany, I think.
So a question just came in related to this, and we haven't really talked about the Greens at all in our conversation so far. And someone wants to know whether the attitude of German voters has changed toward the Green Party because of what's going on in the automotive industry right now.
Because no, well, I think no, not because of the car industry, I think.
There are other factors at play, probably.
Yeah, I mean the climate. No. The biggest part why the attitude or why how the Greens are viewed in Germany has changed is because when they were part, or they are still part of the government, they were considered like pushing forward all these painful reforms, like the energy transition, for example, without paying enough attention to the needs of the people. And the symbol for this was the heat law. You might have talked about
the heat pump law.
The heat pump law.
Right.
And that's why a lot of people, more conservative people, they really started hating the Greens. So I just a few days ago I wrote an article about a new study showing that the negative feelings toward the Greens have increased a lot. So more people now feel a lot more anger and towards the Greens, and they are also afraid of them, especially in the conservative field. But at the same time, I mean, a lot of people know that climate change will be one of the most important issues of our futures. So I think they still have a chance to be part of the next government, although the conservatives say we're not going to form a government with them. Everyone is now thinking that the next government will be another grand coalition. And this could happen, but it also could happen that we have a coalition of the conservatives and the Greens, because remember, only Nixon could go to China, and I think only a very conservative Friedrich Merz could form a coalition with the Greens.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to depend on the numbers, right? From everything that I've seen and heard as well, that and you alluded to this a little bit earlier, it is highly likely that we'll see a Chancellor Friedrich Merz coming out of the election. When the Christian Democrats look at coalition partners, they will probably have to look at the Social Democrats and the possibility of forming another grand coalition, but also possibly looking at the Greens and forming a black-green coalition. Up to now, everything that I've heard indicates that nobody wants another three-party coalition, just because of the difficulties that we've seen with the traffic light. And so at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the math and who can work most closely together. I think that the Greens have shown themselves in this government, in the first half of the government at least, to be incredibly pragmatic with people like Robin Habeck and Annalena Baerbock in the roles that they were in. But the question is, can the Christian Democrats and the Greens find enough common ground to work through a coalition agreement and come up with a plan for their time in office together, or are they too far apart?
I think they could find common ground. I mean, they all could find common ground, I think. The Social Democrats and the Conservatives, they could find common ground too, but they are not as far apart as the Conservatives and the Greens. I think they would find common ground on the climate change, for example, on social welfare. I think that all would work without bigger problems. The big issue would be migration for them. Because they are really, really opposite with regard to migration. But I mean, if the situation with migration gets better in Germany, for example, because Syrian refugees could return to their home country, this could help such a coalition. And if we look at the numbers right now, we would have three options. Friedrich Merz would become chancellor, and he could form a government with the other strong force, the AfD, and he said he's not going to do it. So this is not an option. He could form a government with the Social Democrats, revival of the Grand Coalition. But I think it would work, but there would be a lack of the feeling that this is the transformation and the new impulse we need for the future, but who knows? And the third option at the moment is to form a coalition with the Greens.
I mean, I think that one of the factors that could contribute to a greater sense of transformation would be if Olaf Scholz did not have a role in this new grand coalition government. And honestly, I can't imagine that he would have a role
He won't.
if
Yeah, I
the
would bet
Social
on this.
Democrats come in second place.
No, he will be gone. I mean, except Friedrich Merz is making a big mistake, because remember last time what really broke the neck of the. Do you say this? To break the neck?
Yeah, I mean it's
of the conservative candidate Armin Laschet, because he traveled to the region where this flood catastrophe happened, and he left. So if something like this always can happen, and if it happened, then really that could change everything. But we only have a few weeks left. So chances are high that he won't make big mistakes, Friedrich Merz, and then his party will come in first. And if Olaf Scholz, I mean the chancellor, if he comes in second, and he's always said he won this battle in his party against the defense minister Boris Pistorius by saying, I will be the next, with me, you will be in the chancellery again. And if he comes in second, then he will be gone.
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. I had heard a social democratic strategist say that it's almost as if the Social Democrats, or as if Scholz is hoping that Friedrich Merz stumbles, because that's what happened last time and what brought him in, and that's not necessarily a guarantee that he's going to do well just because his opponent does badly. So obviously we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But the first step on this fascinating path is, of course, Monday, when the confidence vote will take place, and that's the next thing that we have to be watching for. I wanted to maybe close with a completely different question, which is, in 2009, you actually wrote a biography of Angela Merkel. It was the first graphic biography of her, together with an illustrator. Have you read the book that Angela Merkel just released? And if so, were there any surprises in it for you?
I have to admit that I only read parts of it. I haven't read the book. I only like small parts of it, so I'm still looking for it. I'm going to read it, but I'm reading this book right now. I can recommend it if you can read German. It's
The Lost Freedom.
He's a historian. He's member of the CDU, Andreas Röder. Anyway, so I haven't read the Merkel book. From what I read about it, it's it's a little boring. She leaves out a lot of people and a lot of events. She does not regret anything, and I think this is what people reproach to her the most, that she's not like admitting mistakes. That she's trying to depict herself as a chancellor without flaws.
I mean, it's sort of interesting because before the book came out, as we've watched some of the developments over the past few years, including Putin's war in Ukraine and issues around migration policy, a number of the incidents that we saw after October 7th, I was wondering, as we put Merkel's time in office in historical perspective, how will history treat her? I thought this book could be a way of explaining perhaps some of the decisions that she made and some of the policy positions that she took. But it sounds, in many senses, from everything that I've read in terms of reviews that I've read about it, I haven't read the book either, but I've read a number of reviews of it, that she almost goes on the defensive to justify everything that she did and not recognize that maybe some things could have been done differently during her time in office.
When she was still chancellor, I traveled with her from time to time, and we asked her about what do you want people to say about your time as chancellor? And she always told us, oh, others, it's up to others to decide about this. It's not my cup of tea. So when I heard that she was writing a book, I was quite surprised. And to me, it showed that she really, really wants to show that her, for example, policy towards Russia still was the right thing to do. And that's, I think it's a little sad, but at the same time, we still have she's seen not only in a negative way, because I mean, she led Germany through all these crises, and people still trusted her. The majority still trusted her. So she managed to achieve something which Scholz did not manage to achieve.
Well, Miriam, it is always great to talk to you. I really appreciate your taking the time at this very busy time. And I wish you a wonderful Adventszeit and all the best over the holidays. And I look forward to connecting again with you in the new year.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure, and it's always a pleasure to see how much interest you put into Germany. That's great. And we need it in these times, I think, even more.
Well, there's a lot going on, and so it's a very interesting time on both sides of the Atlantic, of course. Once again, herzlichen Dank.
Sehr gerne. See you next time.